If you hired your kids in your business and paid them, the next question you might have is, what's next? Do they have to file a tax return? Stay tuned. I'm going to cover the details and different scenarios where they may or may not have to file a tax return with this new earned income. Hi, I'm Julie Merrill. I'm a CPA and I thrive on helping business owners and individuals grow their wealth and save taxes along the way. One of the strategies we talk about is how to hire kids in our business. Many of the clients I work with, business owners, we are hiring the kids and we're paying them for multiple benefits. The kids are learning part of the business and the business gets a tax write-off. But now that you've paid the kids, what happens next for those kids? Do they have to file a tax return? The answer depends on how you paid them, how much you paid them, and what your corporate structure is like. So let's dive into some more details to walk you through each of those scenarios. In this video, I'm not going to cover the benefits of hiring your kids. I do that in other videos, and I even have a free ebook that walks you through how to do it. You can download it at hiringmykids.com. This video, we're focusing on what happens next for the kids in tax reporting. So just to clear up kind of the difference between earned income and unearned income. So whenever we're paying our kids, we're either issuing them a W-2 or 1099 for work that they performed in our business. That is a form of earned income. The different types of income when we talk about unearned income, and why I'm bringing this up is it has different tax rules, is unearned income represents like interest, dividends, capital gains. Because as a parent, you can elect to include your kids' unearned income on your tax return, but you cannot elect to include their earned income. So when your kids as dependents are receiving a W-2 or 1099, whether it's from your business or someone else, whether they've got a side gig at like Chipotle or McDonald's, we now have to look at, do they have a filing requirement for a tax return this year? So first, let's talk about W-2. So if you issued a W-2 to your kids for working in your business, we now have to look and see if they have a filing requirement. Typically, we're looking at the federal and state standard deductions, and they can be very different. State sometimes is much, much less and lower and requires you to then file a tax return. So we don't file state tax returns without federal. So typically, we're kind of looking at the state standard deduction to see if the W-2 income exceeded that. If we're under that, we're under federal and state, we likely aren't required then to file a tax return. However, if your kids had any type of income tax withholding on those W-2s, whether it was yours or someone else's, and they had federal or state, you might choose to file a tax return for them because they might get some of the withholding back as far as a refund goes. Just a quick note, anytime your dependent kids file a tax return, you want to make sure that you check the box that they're claimed as a dependent by someone else. Otherwise, you're going to come into problems when you file your tax return because it's going to kick it back saying there's already been a tax return filed for that tax ID. So as long as they file and basically select that they're claimed as a dependent on someone else's return, they can report their W-2 income on their own tax return, and then you can still claim them as a dependent on your tax return. Now let's quickly talk about if you pay your kids as a 1099. And I'm not going to go into why you would do 1099 versus W-2. I cover that in other videos. This video is just if they get a 1099, whether it's from you or it even could be from someone else. So when your kids get a 1099, the thresholds are much, much lower. So they don't go by the standard deduction because now that's considered self-employed income. And the threshold is $400 or more. So if they get a 1099 for $400 or more, we now have a filing requirement for them to file their own tax return. How does this work? It gets reported on a Schedule C. The good part about it is then they can write off expenses that relate to that business activity. So they might get some deductions. They're going to probably have to pay some self-employment taxes, although they will get to deduct half of that on the tax return as part of the filing. As long as their income doesn't exceed, again, the federal and state standard deductions, they probably won't have income tax per se when they report that 1099 income, but they will still be subject to the self-employment taxes. And just as a reminder, once again, if your kids have a W-2 and there's any kind of federal withholding or state withholding, you might not have it on a W-2 that you issue to them, but if they do have a side business, or a side job, let me say, working at like the college bookstore or fast food, they're going to likely have some type of withholdings unless they selected exempt on the W-4. And most likely they didn't. So filing may make sense just so they can get that money back. You always want to kind of, consider too, how much does it cost to file that tax return? And for a kid's tax return, you could use some of the online free filing systems because it's going to be a really simple return, likely just a 1099 or a W-2. But if you're getting your taxes done by a tax preparer, many times they will provide and file the kids' tax returns at a much discounted rate just because it is a simple return, and they'll kind of bundle it in with your tax return filing for the year. So don't necessarily assume that they won't do it for you. You might get a pretty good rate if you just go with your current tax preparer. I do, as a CPA, this is kind of my personal side note, I find that filing taxes is a great learning and teaching opportunity for kids to explain how taxes work. Many times it's not even something they can relate to because it doesn't touch them. Well, when they can see the taxes that comes out of their paycheck or their 1099, or they have to now cut a check to the state or to federal because they owe some income taxes or self-employment taxes, it becomes very personal to them. Now, I didn't cover a lot of the tips on how to hire your kids. I have a free ebook you can download, and it covers the various ways that you can hire your kids and how and best practices in doing so. If you found this video helpful, please ring the bell and subscribe to my channel for other videos like it. I'm Julie Merrill. I'm a CPA, and I'll see you next time.